You're listening to part one of a Barefoot Lawyer Reports on China interview with Father Robert Sirico on the arrest and trial of human rights activist Jimmy Lai.
I'm Bill Saunders, Director of the Center for Human Rights at Catholic University, where Chen Guangcheng is a distinguished fellow. Today, to our Barefoot Lawyer podcast, we welcome and are really happy to welcome Father Sirico, who I'm sure all of you know, but he is the founder of the Acton Institute and is very much a figure in the media about Catholic things. And I was happy to see that he, in fact, got a master's degree at the Catholic University of America, where we are. So welcome, Father.
Thank you. It's good to be back at my alma mater, even if only virtually.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you because I want people listening in may not be aware, but about 10 days ago, we had an event at Catholic University at which we received a drawing that Jimmy Lai had done of the crucified Christ. And that was given by Bill McGurn and his wife, Julie, to the Catholic University and specifically to the Bush School of Business. And Father Sirico was there. And we got to chat a little bit, and he agreed to come and talk to us. So, Father, I really would just like to kind of turn it over to you and tell people about your relationship with Jimmy Lai and some of the your involvement in his situation now.
Well, I met Jimmy really at the suggestion of Bill McGurn, who at the time was the editor of the Asian Wall Street Journal. And he suggested, because of my work with the Acton Institute, which is largely dealing with economics and faith, so we do a lot with business and business people and help them understand their work as a vocation, not just as a kind of utilitarian enterprise. Bill said to me, I have met this man, gotten to know him. And in fact, he was just baptized a Catholic. He's a Chinese businessman. Now the editor of the largest newspaper in Hong Kong, Apple Daily. And I think the two of you would hit it off. Well, we did. We met in a restaurant in one of those very tall hotels in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. It was an Italian restaurant, as I remember. The papal nuncio this is now back in about 1997 or 1998. The papal nuncio, who now is Cardinal Filoni, but at the time was the representative of the Vatican to all of the Asian countries that didn't have their own embassies. And we got to know one another, and a friendship was just struck up. I shortly thereafter met Teresa. They wanted to go to Rome. I'm not remembering this in sequence, but I remember they went to Rome, and I was in Rome, and they said, well, can you show us around? And I sure did. And we went down to Pompeii, which is where my family has its origin, and ate much too much good food throughout Italy, which is not a difficult thing to do. No. So all of that is to say that I got to know Jimmy very well, immensely respect his integrity, and knew that even then there was a tension with the government, because as you may recall, Jimmy had he's a serial entrepreneur, really, and he had begun a clothing line called Giordano. Mm-hmm. And when Tiananmen Square took place, he printed T-shirts with Tiananmen Square on it and was selling them in China. Well, they would have none of that, so they forced him to sell his company in China. It still exists in China and in Hong Kong. You can see it all over the place. And so he turned his attention to media. Well, in those days when I spoke to him, we talked about trade with China and sanctions. That was a big debate at the time. The most favored trade status
Right.
of China. And we interviewed him for a documentary that we did way back then, 20 years ago now, called The Call of the Entrepreneur. He was one of, I think it was three business people in it. And it was very moving the way he spoke about his vocation, his love of freedom, and his acquaintance with the writings of people like Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman. And I could tell a lot of other anecdotes. A lot of them would involve good food, Chinese and otherwise, and great conversations with interesting people at his home, and then back in the United States as well.
You know, Father, I want to mention so that it make sure we don't forget, and I want people listening to know this, is the Acton Institute did this wonderful film about Jimmy Lai called The
Yeah.
Hong Konger, which about a year and a half ago we premiered, or we had one of the premieres at Catholic University at the Bush School, and
Right.
anybody who hasn't seen it should look for it. We'll find it and watch it because it's a very good film about this man. I also want to mention, Father, that I'm also one of the people who is on the board and a founder of the Catholic Prayer Breakfast we have in Washington. And
Yes.
about a year and a half ago, we recognized Jimmy Lai as a Christe Fidelis Laity Award for his faithful Catholic witness.
Yes.
You know, we were talking, or when you spoke at Catholic University, you mentioned where you had seen, I guess you'd seen Jimmy the last time, and his wife was there. Will you tell us about that?
Well, the previous time I had seen Jimmy, this isn't the most recent one in January, but I'd seen him and been to Hong Kong in 2018, and of course had dinner with Martin Lee and Jimmy Lai, Cardinal Zen, Teresa, Audrey Dillithorne, who's a very interesting person. People are interested in all things China really need to read her book. I'm sorry, I don't recall the name of it right off the top of my head, but it's a fascinating book about her life growing up in China as a child of Anglican missionary parents. She eventually will convert to Catholicism. She, parenthetically, was very instrumental in helping me with contacts when I went on a trip in, I think it was the year 2000, to mainland China, up the Yangtze River to meet one of the bishops who was, in fact, he was the last bishop who was appointed by Rome and recognized by the Chinese government together. And that's a whole interesting story in and of itself. But that was the last time I saw Jimmy free, other than virtually when we gave him an award, the Faith and Freedom Award, before his arrest. Then we produced this film because we saw what was happening, we saw what was coming, and we thought we need, what is desperately needed is a film that will speak about freedom. And what better lens to project that message through than the life of Jimmy Lai and his own. So we took clips that we had, clips of different places that he had spoken, and of the demonstrations that went on. Remember, there were 2 million people on the streets of Hong Kong in the middle of the umbrella uprising. And we put that together. We interviewed Lord Alton and Chris Patton, who was the final governor of Free Hong Kong. Bill McGurn was in it, and a number of other people in it. And we put that film out. And last April, we found out that the Hong Kong police had demanded that Google take it down from YouTube, because we put it out. By the way, for your viewers, for your listeners to know, this is a film available to anyone on YouTube. And just about the time that the Hong Kong police called it treasonous and demanded that it be taken down, which Google ignored, TikTok also took 3 clips that we had put on TikTok, took them off the web. They said they were violent. Well, the violence was the demonstrations. So when the editorial, I think it was the Wall Street Journal and several other editorial writers objected to this, they put them back up, but they didn't put, they wouldn't put the talking heads on. They said that was violent. It was just the people talking about the philosophy of China. So anyway, we produced this, and with all of the news, it has been viewed by more than 3 million people already. Right. And has received numerous awards, kind of these film awards. So in December, here I am thinking, I hadn't been to Hong Kong or to China since 2018. And I was looking for my old passport. My passport had changed, to see if my visa was still active to get back in. Of course, my good friends really advised me not to do this, that this was not a wise idea. They said, with the extradition treaties, they could move you. And just even as we're speaking now, they're amending the national security law to make it tighter and to fit. But I really felt I needed to do more. I mean, I've spoken out like others, writing and doing a lot of interviews, and we produced this movie. But I felt something personal. I mean, this is a personal thing to me. It's not just a political commitment. And in December, I couldn't find the old passport. So I just Googled what kind of a visa do I need to get into Hong Kong, and found out that Americans don't need a visa to get into Hong Kong. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to Hong Kong.
The Catholic University of America's Center for Human Rights has published a documentary on the United Nations Universal Declaration on Human Rights. The documentary features world-class human rights experts, from former State Department officials to ambassadors and human rights activists. It can be found on our website at catholic.edu/chr.